How Blickley hell do you have this photo?
Theodore Caldwell screamed that, in front of 200 guests, at his own charity gala. His hand shot out and grabbed for the photograph Pearl Brooks was holding. And Pearl Brooks, black woman, no diamonds, no designer bag. She looked like she didn't belong in a room full of billionaires.
Give me that damn photo. Now.
No.
Do you even know what you're holding? Who sent you?
I know exactly what I'm holding, Mr. Caldwell. That's why I'm here.
I will bury you.
Pearl looked him dead in the eyes and said 6 words. Just
That's the
6.
mugshot of my father.
His knees hit the marble floor, in front of every camera in the room. One photograph. One woman he tried to throw out like trash. One answer that shattered a billion-dollar empire. Whoa, but that moment? That didn't come out of nowhere. Let me take you back to where it all started. But before we get to that moment, before the photograph, before the screaming, before a billionaire's knees hit the floor, let me take you back to the beginning. 12 hours earlier, a different world entirely. Hartford, Connecticut, 6 in the morning, the sun barely up. Pearl Brooks sat alone at a small kitchen table in a brownstone apartment. Nothing fancy. Wooden floors that creaked when you walked. A coffee mug going cold beside a stack of legal files 3 inches thick. The fridge hummed in the background. A clock on the wall ticked steady and slow. She'd been sitting there since 4 a.m., reading, highlighting, making notes in the margins with a red pen. The same red pen she'd been using for months. On the wall behind her hung a row of framed newspaper clippings. Each one told a story. Wrongful conviction overturned after 14 years. Police misconduct settlement reaches $3.2 million. Landmark civil rights ruling in federal court. Every headline had one thing in common. Pearl Brooks made it happen. She was the founder and lead attorney of Monarch Legal Defense Fund, one of the most respected civil rights litigation nonprofits in the country. But there was one frame that sat apart from the rest. Not on the wall, on a small wooden shelf by the window. A photograph of a young black man in an orange prison jumpsuit. He wasn't smiling. His eyes looked tired, defeated. Underneath the frame, a small brass plaque read, James Brooks, exonerated 2014, 3 years too late. Her father. Pearl looked at that photo every single morning. Every single morning for the last 12 years. She picked up a second photograph from the table, the same mugshot, unframed. She turned it over. On the back, handwritten notes, dates, dollar amounts, names. One name circled in red ink so many times the paper had nearly torn through. Caldwell. She slid the photograph into her leather portfolio, zipped it shut, took a breath. Her phone buzzed. A text from Senator Elaine Crawford. See you tonight. Stay steady. Pearl typed back. Always. She stood up, walked to her closet, pulled out a simple navy dress. No labels, no logos. She didn't need armor tonight. She needed the truth. And the truth was sitting inside that portfolio. Now let me take you to the other side of this story. Greenwich, Connecticut, the Caldwell estate. 22,000 square feet of stone, marble, and money. The kind of house that made you feel poor just looking at the driveway. Valets in white gloves lined the entrance, A string quartet played on the terrace. Champagne towers caught the last light of the sunset and threw it back in gold.
Theodore Caldwell stood in the grand foyer, shaking hands like a politician running for king. Big smile, loud laugh, $5,000 suit. He was hosting his annual Children's Future Foundation Gala, a charity event that raised millions on paper and connections behind closed doors. Every handshake was a deal. Every toast was a transaction. His wife, Vivian, moved through the crowd like she owned the air in the room. She checked every detail: flowers, lighting, table cards. Then she paused on the guest list. One name she didn't recognize: Pearl Brooks, Monarch Legal Defense Fund. She turned to her assistant. "Who added this woman?" The assistant swallowed. "Senator Crawford's office requested it, ma'am." Vivian stared at the name for a long moment. Then she set the list down without another word. But her jaw was tight. 7:30 p.m. A gray sedan pulled up to the estate. Not a limousine, not a town car, a rideshare. Pearl stepped out. She tipped the driver $20 and said, "Thank you." The gravel crunched under her shoes. The air smelled like orchids and old money and expensive cologne. Guests in furs and tailored suits floated past her toward the entrance. A few glanced over. Some looked away fast. Some stared a beat too long. The kind of stare that says, "We see you, and we're deciding whether you matter." Pearl walked toward the front door. Steady pace, straight back. She had faced far worse rooms than this one. She just hadn't burned any of them down yet. Pearl reached the front entrance. 2 large oak doors propped open, warm light spilling out. The sound of laughter and clinking glasses washing over the threshold like a wave from another planet. She reached into her clutch for her printed invitation. Before she could unfold it, a voice cut through the air like a blade. "Well, well, well." Vivian Caldwell stepped into the doorway, champagne flute in one hand, diamond bracelet catching the light on the other. She looked Pearl up and down, slowly, the way you'd inspect something stuck to the bottom of your shoe. "And you are?" "Pearl Brooks. I'm on the guest list. I'm tonight's keynote speaker." Vivian tilted her head, let out a small laugh through her nose. "A keynote speaker? You?" She said it the way someone says, "That's cute," to a child who just said they want to be an astronaut. "Yes, ma'am. Invited by Senator Crawford's office." Vivian didn't check the list, didn't even glance at the invitation in Pearl's hand. She just sipped her champagne and smiled, the kind of smile that has teeth but no warmth. "I don't know what mix-up happened here, sweetheart, but I personally approve every speaker at this event. And I don't recall approving this." She gestured at Pearl. All of Pearl, head to toe, like her entire existence was a clerical error. Pearl didn't move. "You can verify with your assistant. My name is on the list." "Oh, I'm sure it is. Diversity quota and all that. But let me be honest with you, and I'm doing you a favor here." Vivian leaned in, close enough that Pearl could smell the wine on her breath. "You don't fit. Look around. Look at this house. Look at these people. Now look at yourself. Do you really think anyone in there wants to hear a speech from someone who looks like she shops at a thrift store?" The words hung in the air. 2 guests standing nearby heard every syllable. One of them looked at the ground. The other suddenly became very interested in her phone. Pearl said nothing for 3 long seconds. Then she folded her invitation, slid it back into her clutch, and said, "I'll find my own way in." She stepped past Vivian. Their shoulders nearly touched. Vivian didn't stop her, but she turned to a woman beside her and said, loud enough for Pearl to hear, "They'll let anyone in these days. Next year I'm putting a dress code on the invitation. Maybe that'll filter out the riffraff." Pearl kept walking.
She didn't look back.
Inside, the ballroom was everything you'd expect from a billionaire's party, and nothing you'd expect from a charity event. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars. Tables draped in white linen with centerpieces that probably cost more than Pearl's monthly rent. A 12-piece orchestra had replaced the string quartet. The air was thick with perfume and self-importance. Pearl moved through the room, and the room moved away from her. She approached a cluster of guests near the bar. As she got within 5 feet, the circle tightened. Shoulders turned inward. Conversations got quieter. Not one person looked at her. Not one person said hello. She tried again, walked toward a group by the silent auction table. A man in a charcoal suit saw her coming and physically stepped in front of her to block the table. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. Pearl found her assigned seat. Table 19, the farthest table from the stage, tucked in a corner near the kitchen doors. Every other seat at the table had a name card, but the names belonged to people who clearly weren't coming. Empty chairs all around her. She'd been placed at the reject table. Strategically, deliberately. She sat down, alone. A young waiter, black, early 20s, nervous eyes, approached her quietly. He leaned down and whispered, "Ma'am, I think there's been a mistake with your seating. I can try to talk to someone." Pearl smiled at him. Warm. Genuine. The first real warmth she'd felt in this building. "What's your name?" "Devon, ma'am." "Devon, it's not a mistake. It's exactly where they want me. But thank you. Really." Devon nodded. He looked like he wanted to say more. Instead, he straightened up and walked away. But he glanced back at her once, and in that glance was something Pearl recognized, the quiet understanding between two people who know what it feels like to be invisible in a room full of people who think they're better than you. Pearl reached under the table and unzipped her portfolio. She pulled the photograph halfway out. Her father's face, that tired face, that defeated face. She turned it over and looked at the handwritten notes on the back. The name Caldwell, circled in red. She slid it back in. Not yet. A bell chimed. The lights dimmed slightly. A spotlight hit the stage. And Theodore Caldwell walked up to the podium like he was accepting an award for being alive. "Ladies and gentlemen, friends, partners, and fellow believers in a better tomorrow, welcome." Applause. Big applause. The kind that comes from people who owe you money, or want your money, or are afraid of your money. Theo launched into his speech. He talked about children, education, opportunity. The foundation had funded 32 schools in underserved communities, he said, built playgrounds, provided scholarships. He listed numbers like a man reading a receipt for his own generosity. Then he got personal. "Everything I am, everything this family has built, comes from a tradition of service. My father, Harrison Caldwell, served on the county commission for 19 years. He believed in justice. He believed in doing what was right, even when it was hard. He used to tell me, 'Theo, a man's legacy isn't what he takes, it's what he gives.' And tonight, we continue that legacy." More applause. Pearl's hand tightened around her water glass. Her knuckles went pale. Harrison Caldwell. Pillar of justice. She knew the truth. Harrison Caldwell was the man who sat in a back room in 1993 and pressured a witness to lie under oath. Harrison Caldwell was the man who arranged for $50,000 to be funneled through a shell company to pay that witness. Harrison Caldwell was the reason an innocent black man named James Brooks was convicted of armed robbery
he never committed. Her father served 18 years. 18 years in a cell for a crime that never had his fingerprints on it. He developed cancer in year 15. He requested medical treatment. It was delayed, then denied, then delayed again. He died in 2011, alone, in a prison infirmary, on a mattress thinner than a phone book. 3 years later, DNA evidence cleared his name. The Innocence Project called it one of the most egregious cases of witness tampering they'd ever documented.
But James Brooks never heard the word exonerated. He was already in the ground. And now his daughter was sitting in the back of a billionaire's ballroom, listening to that billionaire's son call the man who destroyed her family a hero. Pearl set the water glass down, gently, carefully, the way you set something down when what you really want to do is shatter it. She looked at the stage. She looked at Theo, and she whispered something only she could hear. Not tonight. Soon.
The applause faded. Theo stepped off the stage, grinning, buttoning his jacket like a man who just nailed a job interview for a job he already owned. Guests swarmed him, handshakes, backpats, the kind of praise that rich people trade like currency. Pearl waited. She let the crowd thin, let the champagne refills make their rounds, let the orchestra play through 2 more songs. Then she stood up from table 19, straightened her dress, and walked toward Theodore Caldwell. He was standing near the grand fireplace. Marble mantel, oil painting of his father hanging above it. Harrison Caldwell, stern-faced, American flag pin on his lapel. The painting was 6 feet tall. The ego behind it was taller. Pearl approached from the side. She waited for a gap in conversation. When 2 guests stepped away, she moved in. "Mr. Caldwell?" Theo turned. He looked at her, the way you look at a notification you didn't ask for. His eyes went to her face, then her dress, then her shoes. He was calculating her net worth in real time. The answer he arrived at was clearly not enough. "And you are?" "Pearl Brooks, Monarch Legal Defense Fund. We specialize in wrongful conviction cases." Something flickered behind his eyes. Not recognition. Not yet. More like the first vibration of an alarm that hasn't gone off yet. A twitch in the jaw. A half-second pause before the smile came back. Wrongful convictions. How noble. He said noble the way people say interesting when they mean I don't care. Well, best of luck with that. If you'll excuse me, he turned away from her. Mid-sentence. Didn't finish his thought. Didn't wait for hers. He simply rotated his body 45 degrees and extended his hand to a white couple behind Pearl like she had already evaporated. Pearl stood there for a moment. The man had just erased her from the conversation like deleting a text message. She let the moment sit. Then she turned and walked toward the hallway. She had a phone call to make. The hallway off the east wing was quieter. Marble floors, dim wall sconces. The noise of the gala reduced to a muffled hum behind heavy doors. Pearl leaned against the wall and dialed her legal team. "It's Pearl. Is everything confirmed?" The voice on the other end was crisp. "Filed at 4 p.m. today. Attorney General's office has the full dossier. Forensic authentication reports, financial records, the witness deposition, everything." "And Crawford?" "Senator's office confirmed. She's there tonight as a witness. She's ready." Pearl exhaled. "Good. I'll call you when it's done." She hung up, slid the phone back into her clutch, closed her eyes for 2 seconds. In the silence, she could hear her own heartbeat. Steady, like a countdown. That's when the footsteps came. Heavy, deliberate.
the sound of boots on marble. Not dress shoes. Boots. Pearl opened her eyes. A man was walking toward her. Tall, broad shoulders, buzz cut, black tactical polo tucked into black pants, an earpiece curled behind his right ear, and on his belt, a holstered firearm. Officer Dale Perkins, off-duty cop, hired as private security for the Caldwell estate. He stopped 4 feet in front of Pearl, feet apart, chest out, hands on his belt, the stance of a man who had already decided how this interaction was going to go. "Ma'am, I need to see some ID." Pearl looked at him, calm. "I'm a guest. I have an invitation." "I didn't ask for an invitation. I asked for ID." "I showed my invitation at the door. I'm on the guest list." Perkins didn't blink. "Guest list doesn't mean much to me. I'm in charge of security in this section of the house, and right now, you're in a restricted area." Pearl glanced around. There was no sign, no rope, no indication that this hallway was restricted. 2 white guests had walked through here 5 minutes ago without being stopped. She'd watched them. This hallway wasn't restricted when I walked in. "It is now." Perkins took a step closer. "I'm going to need you to show me what's in that bag." He pointed at her leather portfolio, the one she'd been carrying all night, the one with the photograph inside. "No." "Excuse me? You have no legal authority to search my belongings. I'm a private citizen at a private event. I've committed no crime. I'm standing in a hallway making a phone call." Perkins' jaw tightened. His hand moved from his belt to hover near his holster, not touching it, not yet, just close enough to make a point. "I'm going to ask you one more time. Open the bag, or we're going to have a problem. The only problem here is that you stopped me and not the 2 white guests who walked through this hallway before me." That hit him. She could see it land. His neck turned red, his nostrils flared. But he didn't back off. He stepped closer, close enough that Pearl could smell the coffee on his breath, close enough that the overhead light cast his shadow over her entirely. "You're going to want to cooperate." "I am cooperating. I'm standing still. I'm speaking calmly. I'm telling you I have a right to be here. What more cooperation do you need?" Behind her, the hallway door opened. 2 guests stepped out. A woman in a red dress saw what was happening and immediately pulled out her phone. She started recording. The man beside her hesitated, then looked away and kept walking. Perkins noticed the phone. He didn't care, or maybe he was too far gone to care. "Last chance." "Or what, officer? What happens next?" Before he could answer, the hallway door opened again, and this time it was Vivian Caldwell. She took one look at the scene, Perkins towering over Pearl, hand near his weapon, a guest recording on her phone, and instead of stopping it, she accelerated it. "What's going on here?" Perkins straightened. "Ma'am, this individual is in a restricted area. She's refusing to cooperate with a security check." This individual. Vivian said it like she was reading an autopsy report. She looked at Pearl. "I should have known. You're still here." "I was invited, Mrs. Caldwell. I'm the keynote speaker." "There's been a change of program. Your segment has been canceled. You need to leave." "Canceled by whom?" "By me." "On what grounds?" Vivian smiled. Cold. Practiced. "I don't need grounds. This is my home, and I'm telling you, your services are no longer needed. Officer Perkins, please escort this woman out." Perkins reached for Pearl's arm. She pulled back, not aggressively, just enough to maintain her space. "Don't touch me." "Ma'am, you need to come with me." "I'm not going anywhere. I'd like to speak with Mr. Caldwell directly." Vivian laughed, short, sharp, like a bark. "My husband doesn't have time for this. He's entertaining actual guests." More people gathered now. The hallway was no longer quiet. 6, 8, 10 guests watching. 3 phones recording. The muffled music from the ballroom played on like a soundtrack to something ugly. Pearl stood her ground. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She just stood there, one black woman against a wall of money and authority and contempt, and refused to disappear. Pearl reached into her portfolio. Slowly, every eye in that hallway was on her hands. Perkins tensed. Vivian stepped back half an inch. Pearl pulled out the photograph. Her father's mugshot. A young black man in an orange jumpsuit. Tired eyes. Broken spirit. 1993 stamped in the corner.
She didn't explain it. She didn't give a speech. She just held it up and said to Vivian very quietly, "Show this to your husband. Tell him it's from 1993. He'll understand." Vivian looked at the photo. Confusion. Irritation. She snatched it from Pearl's hand. "What is this nonsense? Just show it to him. Please." Vivian stared at Pearl for a long moment. Then she turned on her heel and walked back toward the ballroom, the photograph in her hand.
Pearl lowered her arm, took a breath. The hallway was silent, except for the hum of the building and the distant clink of champagne glasses. She waited. The countdown had reached 0.
Oh, hell no.
Now, just imagine you're standing there. Invitation in your hand, name on the list, and they got an armed guard in your face telling you to open your bag. Now close your eyes and ask yourself, what would you do? Vivian walked back into the ballroom, holding the photograph between 2 fingers, like it was something dirty. She crossed the room to where Theo was standing near the bar, surrounded by 3 men in suits who laughed at everything he said. "Theodore." He didn't turn. "Theodore." He held up one finger, the universal sign for not now. Vivian grabbed his elbow, hard. He turned, annoyed. She shoved the photograph into his chest. "That woman, the one I told you about, she insisted you see this. She said it's from 1993. She said you'd understand." Theo looked down at the photograph, and the world stopped. His fingers went stiff around the edges of the photo. The color drained from his face like someone had pulled a plug. His lips parted, but nothing came out. The glass of bourbon in his other hand tilted. Amber liquid spilled onto his sleeve. He didn't notice. He was staring at the mugshot of James Brooks, a young black man in an orange jumpsuit, 1993. But it wasn't the face that broke him. It was the back. He flipped it over, and there it was, his father's handwriting. He'd know it anywhere. The same tight, slanted cursive that signed his birthday cards and his trust fund documents. Dates, dollar amounts, a witness name, instructions on what to say, how to say it, when to say it. A step-by-step blueprint for destroying an innocent man's life. Theo's hand started shaking. The photograph trembled between his fingers. "Where is she?" Vivian frowned. "Who? The black woman? She's in the east hallway. Perkins is handling." Theo was already moving. He shoved past his wife, past the men in suits, past the champagne tower. He crossed that ballroom like a man on fire. Guests stepped aside without knowing why. They just felt it. Something in the air had shifted. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. He burst through the hallway door. Pearl was still standing exactly where Vivian had left her. Same spot, same posture. Hands folded in front of her. Waiting. Perkins was still there too. Still puffed up,
still blocking her path. But when he saw Theo's face, white, twisted, eyes wild, he took a step back. Theo stopped 3 feet from Pearl. He held up the photograph. His hand was shaking so badly the photo looked like it was caught in a wind. "How do you have this?"
Pearl didn't flinch. "It belongs to me." "How? This was private. This was locked away. How did you get your hands on this?" "A former employee of your household found it in your father's study 15 years ago. She kept it. She gave it to me." Theo's voice cracked. "Do you know what this is? Do you have any idea?" "That's the mugshot of my father." Pearl's voice was steady, low, every word placed like a brick. "James Brooks, convicted in 1993 of armed robbery, based on fabricated testimony. Testimony that your father, Harrison Caldwell, orchestrated, paid for, coached, word by word." The hallway went dead silent. 10 guests, 3 phones still recording. Nobody breathed. Pearl continued. "My father served 18 years for a crime he didn't commit. He got cancer in prison. They denied him treatment. He died alone in a prison infirmary in 2011. 3 years before the DNA evidence cleared his name." Theo's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Nothing. "The handwriting on the back of that photograph has been authenticated by 3 independent forensic analysts. The financial records showing a $50,000 payment to the witness have been traced through a shell company your father created. A full dossier, every document, every record, every piece of evidence was submitted to the Connecticut State Attorney General's office at 4 p.m. today." Theo grabbed the edge of a hallway table. His knuckles were white. His legs were failing him. You don't. This is... "An investigation has been formally opened, Mr. Caldwell." And that's when it happened. A voice from behind the crowd, clear, authoritative, cutting through the murmurs like a knife through silk. Senator Elaine Crawford stepped forward. Gray blazer, pearl earrings, the kind of calm that only comes from knowing exactly what's about to happen, because you helped plan it. "I can confirm that the Attorney General's office has received the full evidentiary package. I was personally briefed this afternoon. This is not an accusation. This is a legal proceeding already in motion." The hallway erupted. Gasps, whispers, the clicking of phone cameras. Theo looked at the senator, then at Pearl, then at the photograph, still trembling in his hand. His father's handwriting staring back at him like a ghost. Vivian pushed through the crowd. Her face was white now, too. She grabbed Pearl's arm. "You can't do this. This is our home. You can't just..." Pearl pulled her arm free, gently, almost politely. Then she looked Vivian dead in the eyes. "Your home was built on my father's grave. I absolutely can do this." Theo's knees buckled. He didn't fall dramatically. It was worse than that. He just sank, slowly, like a building with its foundation pulled out. One hand on the hallway table, one hand still holding the photograph. His knees hit the marble floor with a sound that echoed off every wall. 200 guests, dozens of cameras, 1 billionaire on his knees, and 1 woman still standing. For about 5 seconds, nobody moved. The hallway was frozen, like someone had pressed pause on the entire universe. Theodore Caldwell on his knees, Pearl Brooks standing over him, Senator Crawford beside her, and every phone in the room pointed at the same scene. Then everything exploded at once. Theo tried to stand. His legs wobbled. He grabbed the hallway table with both hands and pulled himself up. His face had gone from white to red, Panic was turning into damage control. He straightened his jacket, ran a hand through his hair, forced a smile that looked like it hurt. He turned to the guests crowding the hallway. "Ladies and gentlemen, please, this is a misunderstanding. This woman is clearly... she's confused. She's emotional. Let's not let one disruption ruin a beautiful evening."
Nobody bought it. Not one person. He turned to his attorney, a thin man named Gerald, who had been standing near the back of the crowd with a champagne flute frozen halfway to his mouth. Theo pulled him close and whispered something urgent. Gerald's face told the whole story. His eyes went wide, his lips pressed together. He shook his head slowly. The universal lawyer face for, "We are in catastrophic trouble."
Theo turned back to Pearl. He lowered his voice, tried to sound reasonable. "Ms. Brooks, let's discuss this somewhere private. I'm sure we can reach some kind of understanding. There's no need for all of this to be public." Pearl finished his sentence for him. "The time for private conversations was 25 years ago, Mr. Caldwell. This one happens right here." Theo flinched like she'd slapped him.
Meanwhile, the footage was already loose. The guest in the red dress, the one who had been recording since the hallway confrontation with Perkins, had uploaded the first video before Theo even got off his knees. 30 seconds of shaky phone footage. Pearl standing calm. Theo on the floor. The audio was crystal clear. It hit social media like a match hitting gasoline. Within 15 minutes, the video had 10,000 views. Within 30, it had 100,000. Within an hour, it was everywhere. Every platform, every news aggregator, every group chat in America. A tech CEO who had been sitting at table 3, a man named Douglas Everett, co-founder of a cloud computing firm, watched the video on his own phone, even though he'd just witnessed it in person. He stood up, buttoned his coat, and walked to the valet stand. On his way out, he made one phone call. The next morning, his company formally withdrew from a $400 million joint development deal with Caldwell Heritage Group. No explanation. Just a one-line press release. "We are reevaluating our partnership priorities." He was the first. He would not be the last. Back in the hallway, Officer Dale Perkins was having his own reckoning. The second video, the one showing him towering over Pearl, hand near his holster, demanding to search her bag, had been uploaded separately. It was spreading even faster than the Caldwell footage. The caption read, "Armed security guard threatens black woman at Billionaire's gala." She was the keynote speaker. Perkins Police Department was tagged in the first 200 comments. Then the first 2,000. A department spokesperson issued a statement within the hour. "We are aware of circulating video involving one of our officers in an off-duty capacity. An internal review is underway." Perkins knew what that meant. He'd been a cop long enough to know when the walls were closing in. A Caldwell estate manager approached him quietly and said 3 words. "You should leave." Perkins unclipped his earpiece, removed his security badge, and walked out through a side door without looking back. No dramatic exit, just a man who suddenly understood that the shield he'd been hiding behind his whole career had just cracked in half. And Vivian, poor, proud Vivian. She tried to save the evening. She really did. She walked back into the ballroom, clapped her hands twice, asked the orchestra to resume playing, told the catering staff to bring out the dessert course. She smiled at the remaining guests like nothing had happened, like her world wasn't burning down around her designer heels. But the ballroom was emptying. Guests were leaving in clusters, coats were being retrieved, engines were starting in the driveway. The string quartet had already packed up. The champagne towers stood untouched
and warm. A society columnist from the Hartford Courier, a woman who had attended the gala expecting fluff, was already typing on her laptop in the back seat of her car. The headline she filed 20 minutes later would become the first of hundreds. Caldwell Charity Gala implodes after civil rights attorney drops bombshell. The last photograph taken that night was of Vivian, alone, standing in the center of an empty ballroom, mascara streaked, champagne flute still in her hand, staring at nothing.
That image would be reprinted more times than any photograph the Caldwell family had ever posed for.
The morning after the gala, America woke up to Theodore Caldwell's face on every screen. Not the polished headshot from his company website, not the charity photo op with the oversized check. The image that led every broadcast was the one captured by a guest's phone. Theo on his knees, mouth open, eyes hollow, clutching a photograph like a man holding his own death warrant. The headline cycle was merciless. Billionaire confronted with evidence of family's wrongful conviction cover-up. Caldwell dynasty built on lies, says civil rights attorney. One photo, one woman, one empire falling. By noon, the Connecticut State Attorney General held a press conference. Short, controlled, no theatrics. She confirmed that her office had received a comprehensive evidentiary package from the Monarch Legal Defense Fund. She confirmed that the materials included forensic handwriting analysis, financial records, and a sworn witness deposition. She confirmed that a formal investigation into the wrongful conviction of James Brooks had been opened. She did not mention Theodore Caldwell by name. She didn't have to. Everyone already knew. Within 48 hours, the investigation moved faster than anyone expected. Forensic handwriting experts, 3 independent teams hired by the AG's office, publicly confirmed what Pearl already knew. The handwriting on the back of that mugshot belonged to Harrison Caldwell. Every letter, every stroke, no question. Then came the money trail. Financial records subpoenaed from Caldwell family trusts revealed a $50,000 payment made in March 1993, 2 weeks before James Brooks' trial. The money was routed through a shell company called Greenleaf Consulting, which had no employees, no office, and no purpose other than moving cash. The payment went to a man named Edgar Tully, the prosecution's star witness, the man whose testimony put James Brooks behind bars for 18 years. Edgar Tully was 79 years old now, living in a nursing home in Bridgeport. When investigators sat down with him, he didn't fight. He didn't deny. He gave a sworn deposition that lasted 4 hours. His hands shook the entire time. Harrison Caldwell called me into his office, told me what to say, told me when to say it, told me the man was guilty anyway, so it didn't matter. He gave me the money in a brown envelope. I knew it was wrong. I knew it the whole time. But I was broke, and Harrison Caldwell was the most powerful man in the county. You didn't say no to him.
The deposition leaked.
Of course it did. Within hours, it was everywhere. Cable news played excerpts on loop. Legal analysts called it one of the most damning witness statements in modern wrongful conviction history. And the dominoes didn't stop falling. Investigative journalist Diane Hollister, a Pulitzer finalist who had been quietly digging into the Caldwell family for 2 years, published a 4-part series in the Washington Herald. The series connected Harrison Caldwell to at least 3 other cases of civic corruption spanning 3 decades. Land deals where black homeowners were pressured into selling below market value. Zoning decisions that gutted minority neighborhoods to make way for Caldwell developments. Campaign donations that bought silence from local prosecutors. The Caldwell name didn't just crack. It shattered. Theodore Caldwell was subpoenaed to appear before a congressional oversight committee. He showed up in a Navy suit with his attorney beside him. He looked 10 years older than he had at the gala. His hands wouldn't stay still. His voice cracked on his opening statement.
Then the questions started, and Theo did the only thing he had left. He invoked the Fifth Amendment. Again. And again. And again. 43 times in 2 hours. Every question met with the same rehearsed phrase. On the advice of counsel, I respectfully invoke my Fifth Amendment right. The image of Theodore Caldwell, sweating, stammering, hiding behind the Constitution he'd spent his whole life ignoring, trended nationwide for 3 straight days. Caldwell Heritage Group collapsed in slow motion. Municipalities canceled contracts. Corporate partners issued carefully worded statements about aligning with organizations that share our values. The company lost $2.3 billion in active deals within 6 weeks. Office buildings went dark. Construction sites went quiet. The Caldwell name on a building went from a status symbol to a liability. Vivian filed for divorce on a Tuesday. The filing was leaked by Thursday. She cited irreconcilable differences. Insiders said the truth was simpler. She was trying to separate her personal assets from the financial tsunami heading for her husband. The prenuptial agreement became the most discussed legal document in Connecticut since the state constitution. Officer Dale Perkins didn't escape either. The internal review at his police department, the one triggered by the viral hallway video, uncovered 14 prior complaints of racial profiling against him. 14. Filed over 8 years. Not a single one had been properly investigated. Not one had resulted in disciplinary action. The review board called it a systemic failure of oversight. Perkins was formally terminated. His badge, his gun, his pension, gone. Then came the courtroom. Theodore Caldwell was indicted by a federal grand jury on 2 counts: obstruction of justice and conspiracy to conceal evidence of a wrongful conviction. Prosecutors proved that Theo had known about his father's actions for over a decade. He had found the documents himself in 2012, 3 years before Pearl ever saw them. Instead of coming forward, he destroyed what he could. Shredded files, deleted emails, buried records in offshore storage. But he missed the photograph. The one a former household employee had already taken. The one that ended up in Pearl's hands. The trial lasted 11 days. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty. Both counts. Sentencing? 8 years in federal prison. $12 million in restitution to the Brooks family estate. No parole eligibility for 5 years. Theo stood motionless when the verdict was read. His attorney put a hand on his shoulder. Theo didn't react. He just stared straight ahead like a man watching his own funeral. Officer Perkins was tried separately. Assault and civil rights violations stemming from the gala confrontation. The hallway video was the prosecution's star witness. 3 years, federal facility, and then the moment Pearl had been working toward her entire life. The governor of Connecticut held a public ceremony at the state capitol. White marble steps, American flags, television cameras from every major network. Pearl stood at the podium in a black dress. She held the same framed mugshot that had sat on that wooden shelf in her apartment for 12 years. The governor read the official proclamation. James Brooks, posthumous pardon, full exoneration, all charges vacated, all records expunged. The state of Connecticut formally acknowledged that an innocent man had been convicted, imprisoned, and denied justice for nearly 2 decades due to deliberate misconduct.
Pearl leaned into the microphone. Her voice didn't waver. My father's name is clean. That's all he ever wanted.
The crowd stood. The applause lasted 2 full minutes. Pearl held the photograph against her chest and closed her eyes. For the first time in 25 years, James Brooks was free. 6 months later, same brownstone in Hartford, same creaky wooden floors, same kitchen table, same coffee mug going cold beside a stack of legal files. But the wall had changed.
The row of framed newspaper clippings had grown. New headlines now. Connecticut passes Witness Integrity Reform Bill. Caldwell case sparks national review of wrongful conviction protocols. Monarch Legal Defense Fund receives record $40 million in donations. Each frame hung straight and even. Pearl had hammered every nail herself.
And next to her father's mugshot, the one that had lived alone on that wooden shelf for 12 years, there was a second frame now. The official pardon document, signed by the governor, stamped with the state seal. 2 frames side by side, the crime and the correction, the wound and the stitch. Pearl sat at the table, red pen in hand. Same red pen, new file. Her phone rang. She picked up.
A young woman's voice, shaky, southern accent, maybe 25 years old. Ms. Brooks, my name is Tara. I'm calling from Mobile, Alabama. My brother, he's been imprisoned for 6 years. Armed robbery. He didn't do it. The witness who testified against him, she recanted last year. But nobody's listening. Nobody cares. I don't know who else to call. Pearl pulled the yellow legal pad toward her. Tell me his name. Darnell. Darnell Simmons. Tell me everything, Tara. From the beginning. I'm listening. The call lasted 45 minutes. Pearl filled 3 pages of notes. When she hung up, she opened a fresh manila folder and wrote Darnell's name on the tab in black ink. She placed it on top of the stack. The stack was tall. 12 new cases since the Caldwell verdict. 12 families. 12 people still waiting for someone to fight for them. Pearl looked at her father's photograph. Morning light coming through the window caught the glass and turned it gold for a second. She whispered, Still working, Dad. She picked up the red pen, opened the file, and got back to work. The camera pulls back, past the desk, past the clippings on the wall, past the 2 frames on the shelf, through the window of the brownstone where a black woman in a simple dress is doing what she's always done, fighting for people the system forgot. Now, before we go, let me tell you where they all ended up. Theodore Caldwell, currently serving his 8-year sentence at a federal minimum security facility in Danbury, Pennsylvania. His assets are frozen pending further civil litigation from 6 separate plaintiffs. The Caldwell Heritage Group has been dissolved. The family name that once opened every door in Connecticut now closes them. Vivian Caldwell, divorced, living in a rented 2-bedroom condo in Stamford. Ordered by the court to complete 500 hours of community service at a civil rights education center in Bridgeport. She has declined every interview request. Every single one. Officer Dale Perkins, serving 3 years at a federal facility in Virginia. His termination triggered a department-wide internal affairs review that resulted in 6 additional officers being disciplined for racial profiling and misconduct. The department adopted mandatory body camera protocols and implicit bias training. 14 years of ignored complaints finally had consequences. Senator Elaine Crawford, re-elected in November with the largest margin of victory in her career. She authored the Brooks Accountability Act, a federal bill mandating independent oversight of witness testimony in all capital and felony cases. The bill passed the Senate with bipartisan support. It is currently awaiting a House vote. And Pearl Brooks, still in Hartford, still at that kitchen table, still answering the phone when nobody else will.
Pearl Brooks didn't walk into that gala looking for revenge. She walked in looking for the truth. And sometimes, the truth doesn't just set you free. It brings the people who buried it to their knees. The truth is patient, but it always arrives.